The world believed it understood Muhammad Ali because it saw him constantly. He was everywhere on television screens, newspaper covers, and magazine spreads. His voice echoed louder than the cheers that followed him. To many, he seemed completely visible, as if nothing about him was hidden. But visibility is not the same as understanding. People learned to associate Ali with spectacle. They remembered the sharp words, the bold predictions, the confident grin. His public image felt complete, almost exaggerated on purpose. It was easy to assume that the man in front of the cameras was the whole story. Very few questioned what existed beyond that image. The boxing ring became the frame through which the world viewed him. Every movement, every statement, every moment was interpreted as part of performance. Even silence was analyzed as strategy. In such an environment, humanity often gets flattened into entertainment. Ali understood this better than anyone. He knew the role the world expected him to play, and for a long time he played it brilliantly. Confidence drew attention. Boldness built momentum. The noise created power. But power built this way comes with a cost. Over time, the world stopped separating the man from the myth. The image became more real to people than the person himself. Ali was no longer just a human being with doubts, fatigue, and reflection. He became an idea that others projected onto. What the public celebrated most were moments of domination, victory, control, brilliance, under pressure. Those moments were easy to see and easy to remember. They fit neatly into headlines and highlight reels. Quiet moments never made the cut. Ali's humor and confidence were often mistaken for ego alone. Few considered that confidence could also be armor. Few noticed how often performance protected him from scrutiny. Laughter kept distance. Noise prevented deeper questions. The world rewarded that version of him generously. Applause reinforced behavior. Attention became constant. Over time, expectation replaced curiosity. People stopped asking who he was and focused only on what he could deliver. When someone is constantly watched, they are rarely truly seen. Ali's fame placed him in front of millions while keeping him personally distant. The louder the crowd became, the harder it was for anyone to hear the quieter parts of him. He began to notice this divide himself. The difference between how he felt and how he was perceived widened slowly. Outward certainty did not always match inward reflection, but the world had little interest in the inner life of a champion. Public moments left little room for vulnerability. Strength was expected at all times. Confidence was required. Admitting uncertainty risked disrupting the image people depended on. Ali learned to keep certain thoughts private. The man behind the image lived with awareness that the world preferred simplicity. Heroes are easier to consume when they are one-dimensional. Complexity complicates admiration. The world chose the version of Ali that fit its expectations. As years passed, repetition hardened perception. New audiences inherited the same image without questioning it. Ali was frozen in time as a symbol, even as the man himself continued changing. Growth rarely aligns with public memory. The ring, the cameras, and the crowds created a constant mirror. But mirrors only reflect surfaces. They do not show depth. Ali lived within that reflection for years, knowing it was incomplete. People spoke about him as if they knew him personally. Familiarity bred assumptions. His words were quoted endlessly, but his silences were ignored. What he didn't say mattered less than what entertained. The world believed it knew his courage because it saw him fight. It believed it knew his intelligence because it heard him speak, but it knew little about how he listened, how he endured quietly, or how he reflected alone. Ali's private moments were where understanding truly lived. Moments away from applause. Moments when no one expected performance. Those moments shaped him far more deeply than public victories ever could. The public version of Ali felt permanent. The real Ali was evolving. This contrast created tension that only he could feel. The world continued clapping for a version that no longer fully represented him. Over time, Ali realized that being known publicly does not guarantee being understood. Fame amplifies surface traits while muting inner life. The louder the recognition, the less room there is for nuance. The world thought it knew him because it saw him often, but seeing is not the same as knowing. Knowing requires patience, listening, and time, things fame rarely allows. Ali carried that awareness quietly. He did not rush to correct the world's assumptions. He allowed them to exist. His understanding of himself no longer depended on public agreement. This realization marked the beginning of a deeper chapter, one where the lessons that mattered most would not come from boxing at all. The world thought it knew him, but Muhammad Ali was only just beginning to understand himself. Ali's understanding of strength began to shift long before the world noticed. For years, strength had meant speed, dominance, and the ability to overwhelm an opponent. In the ring, power announced itself loudly, leaving no room for doubt. That definition worked when youth and momentum were on his side, but over time Ali started to sense that this version of strength was incomplete. The world equated loudness with confidence. The louder the declaration, the stronger it seemed. Ali himself had mastered that language early in his career. Words were weapons, confidence was armor, and noise controlled attention. But noise, he learned, also demanded constant energy. There came moments when Ali chose not to respond immediately. At first, those moments felt uncomfortable. Silence was unfamiliar territory for someone whose voice had carried so far. Yet in those pauses, he noticed something important. The room leaned in rather than turning away. Ali realized that silence could redirect power. When he did not react, others were forced to confront their own expectations. The absence of response disrupted the rhythm people were used to. Silence created uncertainty, and uncertainty shifted control. Strength, he began to see, was not always about imposing will. Sometimes it was about refusing to be pulled into unnecessary conflict. Choosing calm over reaction required discipline that physical training alone could not provide. It demanded awareness. As he aged, Ali's body naturally slowed, but his judgment sharpened. He no longer felt compelled to prove himself in every moment. The need to respond instantly faded. What replaced it was confidence rooted in self-knowledge rather than validation. Ali noticed that restraint often unsettled people more than aggression. When someone expects confrontation and receives composure instead, the balance of power changes. Silence removes the opponent's script. Without resistance, provocation loses its purpose. He learned that reacting emotionally hands control to others. Remaining calm keeps it. This lesson extended far beyond boxing. It applied to conversations, disagreements, and moments of disrespect. Strength became strategic rather than explosive. Ali also recognized that loud reactions often mask insecurity. True confidence does not rush to announce itself. It waits, it observes, it chooses carefully. This understanding reshaped how he carried himself in public and private. In earlier years, strength meant winning exchanges, verbal or physical. Later, strength meant deciding which exchanges were worth entering at all. Not every challenge deserved attention. Not every insult required correction. Ali's restraint was sometimes misunderstood. People assumed silence meant weakness or uncertainty. He knew better. Silence, when chosen deliberately, was clarity. It reflected a secure sense of self that no longer depended on dominance. He saw how silence invited reflection in others. Without noise to react to, people were left with their own thoughts. Often those thoughts revealed more than words ever could. Silence turned moments into mirrors. This quieter strength allowed Ali to conserve energy emotionally and mentally. He no longer wasted effort on performances that offered no growth. That conservation brought peace, something applause had never fully provided. Ali understood that strength also meant listening, listening without preparing a response, listening without judgment. In listening, he learned more about people and himself than he ever had while speaking. The discipline of silence required patience. Patience did not come naturally to someone used to fast victories, but patience taught him endurance of a different kind. It trained him to sit with discomfort rather than escape it. Ali's presence changed as his definition of strength changed. He no longer filled every space with words. He allowed moments to breathe. That space made interactions more genuine, less performative. People who encountered him later in life often remarked on his calm. They expected spectacle and found steadiness. That contrast left a deeper impression than bravado ever had. Calm lingered longer than noise. Ali began to value inner stability over outward control. Physical power fades, but inner control grows with practice. He invested in that growth intentionally, knowing it would outlast his athletic abilities. He also learned that silence protected dignity. Loud reactions often escalate situations unnecessarily. Silence de-escalates. It preserves self-respect and leaves room for understanding rather than conflict. This redefinition of strength allowed Ali to age with grace. He no longer measured himself against younger versions of who he once was. He accepted change as part of growth, not loss. Strength, in its truest form, became alignment between values, actions, and responses. Ali no longer needed the world to confirm that alignment. He felt it internally. By learning that strength is not always loud, Muhammad Ali stepped into a deeper authority, one that did not rely on speed, power, or applause. A strength that could sit quietly in a room and still be unmistakable. Ali learned early that success has a way of narrowing identity if you let it. The world praised him for boxing, rewarded him for winning, and remembered him for spectacle. Over time, it became tempting for others to reduce him to that single role: champion, fighter, entertainer. But Ali understood that living inside one definition is a quiet danger. He saw how easily people collapse their worth into what they do best. When success arrives loudly, it can drown out everything else. Ali watched others struggle when applause faded because they had nowhere else to stand. That observation stayed with him long before it applied to his own life. Ali never wanted boxing to be the only language through which he understood himself. Even at the height of his career, he spoke about beliefs, values, and purpose. He resisted being boxed into a single identity even when it would have been easier to accept it. Titles brought recognition, but Ali knew they were temporary. Belts can be won and lost. Records are broken. Crowds move on. If identity is built only on achievement, it collapses the moment achievement ends. Ali refused to build on such fragile ground. He noticed how people treated him differently depending on circumstance. Victories attracted admiration. Losses invited doubt. Fame shifted with outcomes. That inconsistency reinforced his belief that self-worth must come from something deeper than performance. Ali worked to separate who he was from what he did. Boxing was a craft, not a definition. It was an expression of discipline, not the source of his value. This distinction protected him when circumstances changed. As his career progressed, Ali began to think more about life after boxing, not as an ending, but as another chapter. He wanted continuity, not collapse. That required an identity flexible enough to adapt. He understood that roles expire, but character endures. The qualities that made him great in the ring, discipline, courage, focus, were transferable. They did not belong exclusively to boxing. They belonged to life. Ali also recognized the trap of nostalgia. Living in past victories can be as limiting as chasing future ones. He chose presence instead. Each phase of life deserved its own meaning, not comparison to former glory. This mindset allowed him to face decline without panic. When physical abilities changed, his sense of self remained intact. He was not losing himself, he was revealing another layer of who he had always been. Ali's identity was rooted in principles rather than praise. Faith, conviction, dignity, and compassion mattered regardless of circumstance. These values gave him stability when external markers shifted. He saw how many people fear change because they fear losing identity. Ali approached change differently. He treated it as evolution rather than erasure. What he did changed, but who he was did not disappear. By refusing to let success define him completely, Ali preserved freedom. He was free to grow, to soften, to reflect, and to slow down without feeling diminished. That freedom was intentional. Ali also understood that identity tied too tightly to success creates pressure to perform endlessly. Letting go of that pressure created space for authenticity. He no longer had to prove anything to remain himself. The world struggled with this shift more than he did. People wanted the version they remembered. Ali accepted that tension without resentment. He allowed others to hold their memories while he continued forward. This separation between identity and achievement gave Ali resilience. When applause faded, meaning remained. When roles changed, values stayed consistent. That resilience sustained him. Ali's example offered a quiet lesson. Success is something you experience, not something you becoming attached to it. Risks losing yourself when it ends. He believed that life asks different things in different seasons. Clinging to one season prevents growth. Ali chose adaptability over attachment, understanding that evolution is a form of strength, By building an identity larger than boxing, Ali ensured continuity through change. He did not disappear when the ring did. He transitioned, grounded in something deeper than victory. This lesson may be his most enduring. Titles fade, records blur, but a self built on values remains recognizable in every chapter. In learning that identity must be bigger than success, Muhammad Ali protected his humanity. And in doing so, he showed that the greatest victories are the ones that allow you to remain whole, long after the spotlight moves on. Dignity, for Muhammad Ali, was never a single decision made under pressure. It was a habit built quietly day after day. He learned that dignity doesn't arrive automatically with success. It must be practiced, especially when circumstances invite the opposite. Throughout his life, Ali faced disrespect in many forms. Some of it was public and loud, delivered under bright lights. Some of it was subtle, wrapped in doubt or dismissal. He understood that not every moment of disrespect required a response. Choosing restraint was often the stronger move. Ali noticed that reacting impulsively often costs more than it gives. A sharp reply might feel satisfying, but it can erode self-respect over time. Dignity, he realized, is preserved by refusing to let others dictate your behavior. Control begins with choice. He began to approach confrontation differently. Instead of asking how to win an exchange, he asked whether the exchange was worth entering at all. This question changed everything. Many conflicts lost their power the moment he declined to participate. Dignity required patience, and patience required humility. Ali learned to slow his reactions, to sit with discomfort rather than escape it through performance. This was not easy for someone accustomed to commanding attention, but difficulty did not deter him. He saw how quickly situations escalate when pride takes the lead. Pride demands defense at all costs. Dignity, by contrast, allows space. It trusts that self-worth does not depend on immediate validation. That trust takes time to build. Ali's calm often unsettled those who expected confrontation. When provocation met composure, the imbalance shifted. The absence of reaction exposed the weakness of the provocation itself. Dignity redirected the moment without force. He also understood that dignity must be consistent. It cannot be selective. Practicing it only when convenient turns it into image management rather than principle. Ali worked to carry the same composure in private as he did in public. This consistency mattered most when no one was watching. Dignity practiced away from applause is the truest test of character. Ali valued those moments deeply, even though they went unnoticed. He learned that dignity protects relationships. Harsh reactions damage trust, even when justified. Calm responses preserve space for understanding. Over time, Ali saw how restraint kept doors open that anger would have closed. Ali also recognized that dignity includes how you treat others, not just how you respond to attacks. Respecting people regardless of status became part of his daily practice. He believed that how you treat those with nothing to offer reveals who you truly are. In moments of misunderstanding, Ali chose explanation over accusation. When explanation wasn't possible, he chose silence. Both required effort. Both required discipline. Neither came naturally without practice. He understood that dignity does not mean avoidance. It means engagement on your own terms. Sometimes that meant speaking clearly. Other times it meant stepping back. Knowing the difference was the skill he refined over time. Ali noticed how dignity changed the atmosphere around him. People adjusted their tone, conversations slowed, even disagreement softened. His composure influenced rooms without announcement. He also accepted that dignity might be misinterpreted. Some saw restraint as weakness. Ali learned to accept that misunderstanding without correcting it. He did not need everyone to agree with his choices. This acceptance freed him from the burden of explanation. Dignity, he believed, speaks most clearly through consistency. Over time, people notice patterns. Respect grows quietly. Ali's later years reflected this daily practice more than any public statement ever could. As his physical abilities changed, his commitment to dignity remained steady. If anything, it deepened. He found that dignity helped him navigate loss and limitation. When the body falters, how you carry yourself matters more than what you can do. Dignity allowed him to face change without bitterness. He also learned that dignity creates inner peace. Reacting constantly keeps the mind unsettled. Choosing restraint brings clarity. This clarity made decisions easier and days calmer. Ali believed that dignity is not inherited. It is earned repeatedly through small choices. Each moment offers an opportunity to uphold or abandon it. He chose to uphold it more often than not. This practice shaped how he was remembered by those who knew him personally. They spoke less about his victories and more about his composure, less about his words and more about his presence. By treating dignity as a daily discipline rather than a rare achievement, Muhammad Ali showed that character is built incrementally, not through grand gestures, but through consistent restraint. In learning to protect his dignity one moment at a time, Ali demonstrated a form of strength that outlasts youth, fame, and success. A strength that requires no audience and loses nothing when the crowd moves on.